Just 3 days after we got home from our 3,248-mile road trip to Nauvoo in western Illinois for a family reunion, which you can watch a video about at the card above, we packed up yet again and headed south 273 miles to Hurricane, which is on the east side of St. George, Utah, for a different family reunion. When we left home, our Model S battery was charged to 87%, and we met up with some family south of us, then continued on to the Nephi Supercharger because the car was estimating we would get to the Beaver Supercharger with 5%, and that's too close for comfort. Oops, we should have charged to 100% at home before we left. We left the Nephi Supercharger at 69% or 181 miles of rated range and drove to the Beaver Supercharger. We arrived with 9% or 25 miles remaining on the battery. It took a bit of waiting to get a charger because there's only 4 chargers at this location and one was broken and the other 3 were occupied. Luckily, someone left within a couple minutes of us waiting and we got plugged in. We were caravanning with a relative, and after they gassed up, we jumped in their truck and drove to the nearby Beaver Creamery where the kids had fun with their exhibits, and we got some squeaky cheese. After about half an hour, we drove back to our car, which was charged enough, and we continued on our way down to Hurricane. We arrived there with 20% remaining on the battery, or 54 miles. I remembered to set the trip meter prior to leaving home, which is trip A on this screen. We drove a total of 278.4 miles, which used 92.1 kilowatt hours, or 331 watt hours per mile on average, and our car turned over to 70,000 miles during this drive. We stayed in an Airbnb with some relatives, and after I dropped off Jessica and the girls, I drove to the St. George Supercharger, getting there with 28 miles of range remaining. The charge rate peaked at 131 kilowatts briefly, which is just 1 over the theoretical limit from Tesla of 130 kilowatts for our 2015 Model S. The car estimated it would take just over an hour to get to 100%, and I stayed for an hour and 21 minutes, taking on 222 miles of rated range, getting up to 96%, or 250 miles of rated range. After getting back to Hurricane, it was down to 86%. There I plugged the car into a standard household outlet on the outside of the house, set to charge to 90%, and it took 3 hours to get there. The next day was Independence Day, and we attended family reunion activities such as a group breakfast and exploring the sandstone formations. Whoa, Lydia already got up there. Wow, you girls are good at climbing. Let's look at this view. Oh no, Clara's left out. She's crying. Hey Clara! Lucy, did you climb up there all by yourself?
Yeah.
Wow, you're a good climber.
Yeah.
Swimming at a community pool.
Uh-oh, here comes Claire. Oh.
Then after hours of hanging out at the pool, we went back to our Airbnb to swim some more in the hot tub and relax. Good dancing, Lucy. Oh. Cheese. Oh boy. You alright?
I got water in my nose.
We barbecued some dinner, played lawn games, and rode the one wheel around the yard. Go Lucy! As dark descended, we drove, skateboarded, and one-wheeled over to the Dixie Springs Park nearby, where the community was getting together to light fireworks, which is always a great way to captivate the attention of children. We're riding to the park for the 4th of July. I found another fellow one-boarder here, and I'm riding a one-wheel as well. We're heading to the park there across the street, and we're going to be setting off some fireworks. Whoa, I think that was the start. What do you think, Clara? Is that so cool? You're a speedy little girl on that bike, Lucy. Whoa, that was close. Wow. That sounds so cool. The next day, we continued exploring the desert, practicing riding the one wheel, playing at Dixie Springs Park, where that evening we had a big reunion dinner. Overhead, everyone noticed a buzzing sound, which was a powered paraglider up above. When he landed, I wheeled over out of curiosity and ended up discovering that it was Grant Thompson, who created the King of Random YouTube channel. I spoke with him and his wife for a while and ended up giving Grant's whole family a ride in my Tesla as they were considering getting one.
Woo! Yay, Daddy!
Yay, Daddy!
Yay, Daddy!
3 weeks later, I found out that he'd passed away from a paragliding accident near Dixie Springs Park, and I was crushed. He's a really nice, cool guy. My heart really goes out to his wife and sons, and since then I have done some things to help them where I could. At the beginning of our drive back home, we left Hurricane at about 78% or 200 miles of rated range on the battery and drove to the Beaver, Utah Supercharger. The girls got some much needed naps from the days of activities, and we arrived in Beaver with 25% or 64 miles remaining. After about half an hour, we left with 66% or 172 miles to head up to the Nephi Supercharger. We arrived there with 14% or 35 miles remaining. The car estimated 15 minutes to get enough charge to get home, but we ended up staying for 26 minutes and leaving with 59% or 154 miles. We arrived home with 34% or 90 miles remaining on our battery, where we then resumed our regular charging habits of around town, typically charging up to 80% and not plugging it in again until around 50%. I plugged it in and set it to 90%, and the car estimated it would take 8 hours to charge from 34% to 90%. However, I went ahead and just charged it at work the next day since they provide free charging there. Round trip, we drove 644.8 miles using 215.6 kilowatt hours at an average of 334 watt hours per mile. The average price for retail rates of electricity in Utah is 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So for the 34.6 kilowatt hours that we used, that would be $3.46, not from superchargers. However, we mostly charged at superchargers on this trip, and at this time the price at a supercharger in Utah was 22 cents per kilowatt hour, and we used 181 kilowatt hours at superchargers on this trip, so that translates to $39.82. That results in a grand total of $43.28 for the electricity that we used on this trip. After my experience with this road trip, as well as our road trip to Western Illinois the week prior, I researched what more I could do to have additional options for charging my Tesla from more varied locations. For instance, on this trip, the Airbnb house we stayed at had a TT30 outlet on the side of the house, probably for if you parked your RV next to the house. But unfortunately, I didn't have that adapter with me, so I had to use a standard household outlet, which is half the amount of power. And for what it's worth, Tesla doesn't even make that adapter anyway. I looked at Tesla's adapters, but I just kept thinking of all the situations I have been in, and often the 20-foot long mobile connector cord just isn't long enough. However, it's not reasonable to get an extension cord for all the various types of plugs. What I realized I could do is get an extension cord that uses the NEMA 1450 connector that I already had, and then at the other end of that extension cord, get various adapters to adapt from dryer outlets or other varied connections to the NEMA 1450 extension cord. And this would then require me to change the amps down in the car depending on the outlet type that I plug into, but it means that I can carry one long extension cord that can handle the heaviest load of up to 40 amps or all the way down from there. I have now since used this method many times, and I've charged in varied locations on many trips since this time. And if you're interested, I will link a card above that is a video I made that outlines this charging solution in detail. I hope this has been helpful, seeing how this trip went for us in an electric car, and I will see you in the next adventure video. Thanks for watching.